Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are in the world. Welcome back to the Caring Economy with me, your host, Toby Usnik. We are so excited to share this story with you today. This is about a remarkable guest who embodies the spirit of dedication, passion, and deep connection to a place close to her heart. Tara Grieb's journey intertwines with the history and the magic of the old Rhinebeck Aerodrome in the Hudson Valley in ways that are truly inspiring. From her humble beginnings, attending air shows as a wide-eyed 10-year-old girl to become an integral part of the aerodrome's fabric, Tara's story is one of determination, grit, and unwavering commitment. From selling snacks at 13 to embodying iconic characters like the Trudy Truelove at 15, Tara's journey at the aerodrome has been nothing short of extraordinary. Today, she actually is on top of the whole organization. She is the director of operations. She brings decades of experience and passion and a deep-rooted connection to ensure that the aerodrome thrives for generations to come, not just in the Rhinebeck or the Hudson Valley area, but globally. So today we're going to delve into Tara's career trajectory, her profound connection to the aerodrome, and explore the broader implications of women's roles in society, both past, present, and future. So with no further ado, let's welcome Tara Grieb to the show.
Hi, Toby.
I mean, I'm chuckling because I think of you as this aerodrome aviatrix, but I also know that you spent most of your career as a teacher and a principal in public schools.
That
So
is true. 25 years.
yeah, why don't you give us like a 2 or 3 minute digest of Tara's life, how you came up and found your way?
So I grew up actually here in this area, and going through school, it wasn't if you go to college, it was where you go to college. And so when I went off to college, I always had visions of being a dancer, being on Broadway. Little did I know I'd end up being only 5 feet tall and looking like I was 12 when I was 18. Um, but my parents, both who were educators, felt that, they wanted me to have something solid to fall back on. And 30 years ago, a college degree was a guarantee of a good career. And so I switched my majors into education and spent 25 years doing that. Initially in Baltimore, Maryland, for a short stint, and then the rest of the time here in the Hudson Valley of New York. 17 of my 25 years, I was a building principal.
Wow. I mean, that is kudos to you. I can only imagine how heroic your days must have been, or you had to have been. We know these shows like High School Musical and stuff.
Oh, right. I wish it was like that. It's not.
Can you expand on that? How so? Is it different or better or worse?
I think every job has its highs and lows and its challenges. People will talk about unfunded mandates, or without being negative, I would say that feeling of, well, I went to school, so I know how one should run.
Mm.
And trying to get the value as an educator for the time, training and everything that you've put in. When you look at how, at least in New York State, all educators have to have a master's degree, and many have more than that. As an administrator, I have 2 master's degrees. And yet, when you look at the pay scales compared to doctors and lawyers who have the same amount of training, it's pittance. And even worse so, for teachers than it is for administrators. And I don't think that people value the knowledge base that educators have. I always would say, if your plumber tells you need to redo your plumbing under your sink, you're not really going to question them and you're just going to go ahead and do it. But if your educator tells you your child needs to do X, Y, and Z, or you need to do X, Y, and Z to help your child, it's a whole different challenge.
Yeah.
With that said, though, the connections that you make and seeing the light bulb go off or knowing that you made a difference in a kid's life is more than worth it.
Yeah. Can you say, we were going to talk about the aerodrome, but I do want to stick with the education because it's so important.
Sure.
Maybe, any message? I mean, you definitely stuck with it and found your purpose with it, but what message might you say to educators today? And I'm thinking more, like public school teachers across the US about sticking with it and finding the good or being a part of the solution. I don't want to put words in my mouth. Yeah.
I think there's good and bad in every career. So, there's good and bad in education with regard to, there are administrators who don't treat their teachers well. There's superintendents who don't treat their districts well. There's teachers who, maybe aren't best suited for what they're doing. However, there's so much good. And so for me, a lot of people, when I would tell them I was a principal, would be like, oh, my kid would never have met you because they weren't ever bad. And that's not, I think, what it should be. So speaking from that level, you would go out of your way to interact with all the positives that were going on in your building because you had to deal with the negatives, but you needed to go out of your way to make sure you found those positives every day to help keep that balance.
Yeah.
And I think the same is true for classroom teachers, right? There's the mandates, there's the people who want to give you their opinion. There's sometimes, colleagues who are competitive or that you don't gel with. There's so many things that could go wrong, again, in any career. But the bottom line is that when you're in your niche and you are teaching your material and connecting with children and you see that light bulb go off, or you know that kid really appreciated your assistance, your caring for them, your knowledge, whatever it might be, or all of those things.
Yeah.
It's really important to hold on to those moments to help you get through the other moments. But the other thing that I will say is that we can't stick with it at the cost of ourselves. And so I think the other thing, the most valuable thing, and this might be against popular opinion, that we can do, and frankly, it's what I did, is when you know that something isn't serving you or you are no longer giving your best because you just don't have it in you, to have the strength to step back and pivot and do something else and let someone else step in who may be fresh, ready, whatever the case may be. And a lot of us either are afraid to do it or don't have the self-awareness to do it, and so on and so forth. So I think that's important too.
That's really helpful. Is a pivot, in fact, what happened with you and brought you to?
Yeah. I was in year actually 24 of public education, and my secretary used to call it the March Mushies. Every year around March, I'd be like, man, you just get exhausted and run down. And I'd say, I don't know how much longer I can do this, whatever it might be that might be wearing on me. PS, especially through COVID, which is a whole conversation we won't have. We had a gunman in our school take us. It made national news in 2009. Like the number of things that we've gone through, that staff were exhausting, and yet we had so many wonderful successes. But I knew I was running out of tools in the toolbox. I was running out of fresh ideas. Something that I found 5 years prior as a tone and culture building event wasn't popular anymore, and like, we age and we evolve. And so I knew that my tolerance was getting low for things, my innovation was getting low, and I didn't want to be the person who just started counting backwards to how many years they had left. One of the other issues I had was, like a lot of people, wanting to make sure that financially I wasn't, committing financial suicide or doing myself a disservice down the road. I was lucky enough that for me, my oldest had 1 year left of college, and my youngest, who of my three, we're a blended family of my kids, I was responsible for half of their college. And I want to make sure I had the money set aside. And it was in 2022 that I looked at my accounts. Thankfully, my daughter's really smart and got a great scholarship. So when I looked at the money, I went, it's all there. Like, barring a huge increase in what they charge, it's all there. So that was empowering. And then I found myself, when I was getting those feelings, clicking on apply to jobs, almost like applying for jobs that I knew I would never have a shot at, because in my head, I was doing something to rectify these feelings that I was having. But in reality, I wasn't ever going to have to make a decision because I wasn't even going to get an interview. And so it was this safe, like, oh yeah, I'm working to make a difference. And so in 2022, I applied for academic advisor to athletes position at University of Albany. That was actually a job I did as a graduate assistant in grad school. So I had familiarity with it. My daughter is a Division I athlete, so I knew sort of what she needs, and her support. Lo and behold, I got offered the job. And so I looked at my husband and I said, what do you think? And so I think the number is $108,000 a year pay cut, I took the job. and added a 1-hour commute each way to my life. But I felt so empowered and so happy that I had the guts to do it. And I thoroughly enjoyed the job. And this will actually segue us into the aerodrome. Probably 2 years prior, I had reached out to folks at the aerodrome to say, I really think you guys need an executive director. I'm sending along my resume. Here's what I've been doing since I left the aerodrome over the last 25 years. I'd love to be that girl. And they kept saying, yep, we're not there. We're not ready. Nope. And so I'm being this academic advisor, and it's February of last year, just a year ago. And a baseball player came in and he said, I know I'm not going to be a baseball player. I'm graduating in May. I don't even know how to look for a job. And I said, all right, let's pull up Indeed and I'm going to show you how it works. And the job that pops up on the screen is Director of Operations, Old Rhinebeck Aerodrome. And I'm like,
the universe is talking to you.
yeah. So I go, hold on
it.
1 second. And I'm reading it. And I go, okay, so I am going to model the process for you as I apply for this job.
Perfect.
And he goes, you're leaving? And I'm like, no, I'm just showing you how to do it. And lo and behold, I got the job.
I love that story. And what happened to the athlete?
So he actually ended up getting a great internship. He was from the Buffalo area. So he went out that way, back towards home, and got a great internship that I do still keep in touch with him, that ended up becoming a permanent, slightly higher than entry-level position with a financial company. So he's really, putting his degree to work. And it all worked out okay.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, again, today we have with us Tara Grieb. She is the Director of Operations, which is actually much more than it sounds like. She runs the whole ship at the old Rhinebeck Aerodrome in Rhinebeck in the Hudson Valley, where we have a home. Tara, why don't you give us an overview of the aerodrome, and not only just what it is and its importance, but how you found your way to it?
Absolutely.
And then we know how you found it later.
Yeah, absolutely. So the aerodrome is located in both Red Hook and Rhinebeck, New York. So don't let the name fool you. Red Hook gets very upset that they're not in our name, but it is a World War I is probably what it's most known for, but it's an aviation museum, an air show attraction in the Hudson Valley. It is going into its 66th season of operation. It was started in 1958 by Cole Palin, who bought 6 airplanes from Roosevelt Field when it was no longer going to be an airport. If it sounds familiar, that's where Charles Lindbergh took off from for his transatlantic flight. When that was becoming a shopping mall, they were selling off all of their aviation things, and Cole was able to acquire 6 original World War I airplanes at that time. And he was able to purchase the property in the Hudson Valley for a song, because an unsolved murder had happened on that farmland and nobody wanted to touch it. Word on the street is everybody knew who did it, but nobody was talking. And so he was able to purchase the property, which is well over 40 acres. And he transformed it by hand, pickaxe, all the things, to create and fashion a runway, clearing the trees by hand, all the things. And from then to his death in 1993, really made it one of the foremost aviation collections in the world. And more importantly, he always believed a plane isn't a plane unless it flies. So while we do have a very extensive static collection, I think what sets us apart from the Smithsonian and some of these other places is that we do 38 air shows a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it is not the Smithsonian. I think what is its biggest charm can also be its Achilles heel. I mean, you see the pictures behind me. It is primitive and charming, which people love, but it's primitive and charming, which can be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Partly when you're trying to continue to evolve the place, but not lose the character and the magic.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing like it. And so in 1993, when he passed away, it became a nonprofit foundation, which it has been ever since. And up until this year, it was run solely by a board of trustees who gave of their spare time to be on various and sundry committees or have different roles as board members to get things done.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with our new structure. We're trying to have more centralized leadership as far as day-to-day operations while I still answer to the board and there are still committee decisions. It just tightens the ship a little bit and brings in a little bit more structure as well as some consistency, which is nice. I found the place as a 10-year-old. We lived down the street from it in Rhinebeck when I was a kid. And also on my street was the Hammond family. Bill Hammond was the original chief pilot under Cole. And his kids, Nate and Clay, I actually babysat for, and they are both aviators themselves these days. So my mother, who was an educator in Red Hook, said, hey, my former student Jen is playing Trudy True Love at the Airdrome. We haven't been to see the Hammonds. Let's go. Something different to do on a Sunday. So we went. Keep in mind, I wanted to be a dancer and a Broadway, blah, blah, blah. So we go and I see Trudy True Love and this whole damsel in distress show for an hour and a half unfolding in front of my eyes. And I go, oh my God, I want to be Trudy True Love.
In
and
the
it was
air, right? Is that like out on wings and things, or?
Yes, but no, I don't want to give away all of our tricks. So yeah, it's a tie the girl to the train tracks kind of a, old campy melodrama in theory. I would say I always played her as a strong, independent female who let her Percy Goodfellow think he rescued her when really she rescued herself most of the time, before feminism was cool. And so, so it was amazing. That was all I could think about. So we lived close enough and it was a back road that my mom said, of course it was 1983. My mom said, you know what, you can ride your bike there on weekends as long as you have nothing else to do and blah, blah, blah. So that's what I started doing. At 13, I was old enough to work in the snack stand. So I got a job doing that. And I did that for 2 years, but I made it known that that was what I wanted to do. Like that was the goal. So at 15, Cole called me at home and said, I heard you want to be Trudy True Love. And I said, uh-huh. And he was, all right, this is your year. You start, blah, blah, blah. We have to get you a dress made and all the things. And I did it until I was 25.
Wow.
But in those 10 years, I didn't imagine that I would fall in love with the place, the planes, the history, that I'd want to be flying and do those things and all that came with it. I was being this like, I just want to be that character, and who knew all the benefits that would come with it. And it was, being a docent, learning how, like the sign that's in this picture, learning how to hand paint something like that.
Yeah.
Having your arms in an engine because you're the only one small enough to get your arm in there. I can't even, it's amazing I'm alive to some degree. Did learn firsthand that stop, drop, and roll really does work.
Wow. But you went on to get your own pilot's license eventually, right? And
for a very short time. There were 4 of us within a year or 2 of each other in age. And Dick King, who was the original Sir Percy Goodfellow, one of the original pilots with Cole, lived at Carvel Golf Course that no longer exists in Hudson Valley. And so Mr. Carvel and he were very close. And when Mr. Carvel passed away, of Carvel Ice Cream, if people are familiar with the name, when he passed away, he left some money for the 4 of us to get our pilot's licenses. So Dick's son, Jeff, taught us. And it's all well and good, but as you know, it's expensive to maintain. So at 19, when it was time for a biannual, I just didn't have the wherewithal to keep it up. So I in a pinch, could I figure it out? Yes, but now I make a really good passenger.
Yes, and you stay close to the topic. I wonder if you might tell us a little bit about just aviation and women writ large. I mean, I like what you said about, before feminism was cool. I've had female pilots on this show, Zara Rutherford, who set a world record going around the globe as the woman ever. Christina Ho, the first female pilot for Chinese pilot at that for Cathay Pacific. And I've yet to get her on, but our friend Kate, who you're honoring this year at your gala, she's one of our instructors, an amazing story. But tell us about what's the story about women in aviation? They're underrepresented, they're coming up, but
not enough of them.
Yeah.
It's definitely, like many other things, it's a male-dominated world. And I think, the victories are small. For my own personal comparison, I would say how many women were principals when I started versus when I finished, you know, that evolution occurred as well. So I think that it's growing. More women are involved. One of our board members, Heather Howley, is the owner of Independent Helicopters. She's amazing. She's a wonderful helicopter pilot. She's young, good friends with Kate, actually. And, you know, so I think that there's definitely a place. And I really see us as being a way to foster that pathway. So, you know, 30 years ago, the biggest thing as a female at the aerodrome was that Cole would drive anyone who played Trudy that was getting married to their wedding in his pink Cadillac, you know, which was great. And it was this honor. And I would say back then, you know, playing Trudy True Love was like being the varsity quarterback. It was a big deal. You know, these days, I would say certainly there's been more of them over the years. And also it's hard to fill seasonal roles and seasonal positions. And so it's, you know, not as solid. The girl that's doing it now, Paige, has been doing it for several years. She's great. She's a freshman in college. Hopefully we keep her for a while. And the role really suits her. But what I'm finding is that our girls who work on site in the rides booth and whatever, they are truly wanting to learn how to do all of the things versus when I was a kid there, my job was more paint the signs, answer the phones, do the rides. Now the girls are helping move the airplanes, helping to put them into the hangar and do those things and things that, you know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that wasn't their spot.
Particularly taking your principal years and working in secondary public schools, how do we expose young people, but women and young girls, to aviation as both a potential vocation, a hobby, something that can build skills, knowledge, education, in the same way we do for boys? I know there's the BOSI program, which helps high school kids access the training and education, but is there any sort of like, what tips would you give to young boys or girls who want to explore aviation?
Well, I think starting in high school, what I used to always say to my students is take everything that you can because it's free. If you have room in your schedule for electives, take them because they're free. You never know what you might find that you love. We struggled to get girls into our math classes, our deeper sciences that weren't required. And actually our school was building a really great engineering, computer engineering, plus still hands-on construction program. And, you know, we would get 3 or 4 girls a year into it, but it was always a struggle to get them that way. And I think maybe as they were growing up in their outside of school influences, there wasn't that, oh, you should think of this. You know, I think that the more we can get those messages to them that there's options is the better. Strong guidance counselors who see spark in their students and make suggestions, and then have enough of a rapport with their students that their students would suggest or would follow that suggestion, you know, and trust their guidance. But I also think more and more programming is out there that wasn't out there before. You know, BOCES never had an aviation program. Dutchess Community College now has an aviation program, which they never had before. So I think affordable opportunities is wonderful. I also think that there's not enough knowledge out there that the number of scholarships that are out there for females going into aviation is insane. You know, and again, so it's really just, where are our young people getting their information from, and then making sure that those who are the information givers are giving, I guess, what I would call bipartisan information, you know, covering all the bases is key. With that said, you know, with us, we do have a youth aviation program that we're starting. And actually one of our great success stories is one of our girls, Jess, who played Madame Fifi in the air show, did the rides before and after the show. She was going to A&P school at Dutchess Community College. She got her licensure in July. She was the only girl to finish. There were 3 girls in the cohort when she started. She was the only one to finish. And so as soon as she was finished, we made her mechanic's assistant first one ever female at the aerodrome. And we made such a big deal of it. We were so excited. We kept her for approximately 2.5 months because Stewart Air Force Base and, airport scooped her up and offered her a crazy amount of money, 401k and all the things, more power to her.
So they get scooped up because they have
really
that
do.
thing that these employers want. So
they really do.
So tell us your website, and is there information there for people curious about getting into aviation or find resources?
So it's minimal at this time. Actually, our website is due for a bit of an upgrade, but it's certainly packed with information. It's www.oldrhinebeck.org. With that said, through that, I would say for many people, being involved with us is a great way to get your foot in the door and just see if you like it. We have lots of volunteer positions, but we do also hire seasonal paid help. Everything from gift shop, parking lot, being in the show and being a character, doing our rides booth and selling rides and loading customers on the rides, museum tour docents. I mean, you name it, we have that as an opportunity. And then our youth program does have a site or a section on our website. And that is something that is a pay to play program. They meet 2 days a week. But they're hands-on building aircraft, working on things, and they get flight time.
So, Tara, I'm going to let you have the last word. We always ask our guests to tell us what pearls of wisdom they've gleaned in their life. And I wonder what you might say to someone young or old about defining a purpose-driven career, a purpose-driven life. You've clearly done it and are leaving a wonderful wake.
Thank you. It's funny. I would say I only just took my own advice in the last 3 years. So, for all of my career as an administrator, I was telling people what, follow your gut, do what makes you happy, and not doing it myself. And that's not to say I don't want to make it sound like I wasn't happy in education or helping people, etc. But I think the pearls of wisdom are what serves you when you're 20 and when you're 40 may not serve you when you're 50. And I think that to be able to have the strength and self-awareness to say, this doesn't suit me anymore, and I'm going to drop back and punt and try something new, and it may or may not work, I think is one of the greatest strengths we can have. The other thing I would say is when you have the courage to leap, where you land doesn't have to be your forever. Meaning, if you look at what I did with Albany, that job was close enough to what I felt like I needed that I was willing to make the jump. Once I landed, I realized it wasn't going to be sustainable. So I then used that time to then find the better landing, the better leap. And I think that's the part that people, that maybe they have the courage to take the jump, they land, they realize it's not a good fit, and they either go back or just throw their hands up in the air and say, that's it, I've messed up, I can't fix this. And that's not the case. If you've learned you can jump once, you can jump again and again and again and again. And finally, I think, the years of having a career for 30 years are past. And I don't think there's any harm in evolving what you do as you evolve.
Yeah. I love all that advice, and I'm going to use a sort of an aviation metaphor. I have my VFR license. I've been flying for many years, but we have to, by law, to stay current, do 3 takeoffs and landings every 90 days. So not a bad idea to have same kind of expectation of ourselves in our lives and our careers, that we're doing takeoffs and landings with some regularity. We might stay at the same airport, or we might go to a different airport, right? But the point, we got to stay current. And just as we take our own lives and our passengers' lives in our own hands, we should treat our careers and others with that same kind of responsibility.
And don't be afraid to do something that's uncharted territory.
Yep. Well said. Tara Grieb, thank you so much for joining us today on the Caring Economy. She is the Director of Operations at the Old Rhinebeck Aerodrome in Hudson Valley, New York. Check it out. Come visit. Boys, girls, parents, old folks. It's a really inspiring place and an important part of history. So thank you so much for sharing it, Tara.
Thank you so much for having me.